Okay, so if there was one teacher that everyone at my high school, Lowell High School, knew about, it was Milton Axt Jr., who taught gym. And it wasn't just the 600 kids in my grade, or older kids my sister's age, but even grown adults my friend's parents' age who had gone to Lowell since before their super racist Indians mascot was changed to the much more palatable Cardinals for the hyper-liberal San Francisco crowd. Even they knew Milton Axt Jr. And the reason everyone knew about him, and the reason why we were extremely excited to take his class, was not because he was a pioneer of gym, an incredibly good gym teacher, or even because he was a Lowell High School staple, but it was because he was notoriously easy. He was easy in a way that no teacher ever should be, and no teacher ever has been since. And if anything, it was a testimony to how screwed up the San Francisco public school system was, because somehow Milton Axt Jr. has been teaching there for the past million years. So Mr. Axt was like Gollum, but wearing a tracksuit all the time. He had these bulging, really pale, watery eyes, like paper white skin. As I said before, he only wore tracksuits, but they were always navy blue, white accents if he was feeling frisky, pure white tennis shoes, and if it was the sun was harsh on his failed, feeble eyeballs, he could wear a white bucket hat. So it was just blue and white every day. And our school colors were maroon and white, so I don't know what that means. But anyway, as I mentioned before, Mr. Axt's class was notorious for just being an absolute joke. And if you were to look on his Rate My Teachers page, you might see a review like, Mr. Axe probably should have retired a few thousand years ago. But he doesn't make you run, and it's an easy A if you show up and dress. So if you want to do nothing during PE, Mr. Axe is the absolute best choice. Now, me and my friends didn't quite want to do nothing during PE, we just didn't want to go to PE. So we developed a scheme where there were 5 of us in his class, and one person would go every day of the week. I was assigned to Tuesday's class. And that meant that you went to class on that one day, and every time Mr. Axt called any of our friends' names, you would say, here. He seemed oblivious to the fact that 4 people of different genders, much different vocal pitches, could have the exact same voice, and that it was a different one every day of the week. I thought we were just truancy geniuses for this, and it meant that we had double lunch 4 days a week, and we could go to the mall and sit in the massage chairs at Brookstone for 45 minutes before going back to school. So we were all for it, and we thought Mr. Axe was just a fool and that we were beating the system. So all that changed one very fateful afternoon when my friend Natasha and I were in the midst of cutting a football pep rally. Now, based on my consumption of popular media, I have found it safe to assume that sports are cool. Now, I went to a big public high school, and it seemed like it would be safe to assume that sports would be cool there too. But sports were not an extracurricular that you did if you wanted to be cool. I don't think I could name you a single player on our varsity football team over the course of 4 years that I was at Lowell High School. I played soccer for a while, and I was ruthlessly ridiculed by my friends for it. I eventually quit because it just wasn't worth being teased all the time for being into sports. But anyway, it was really easy to cut pep rallies. You just got a readmittance slip the day before, flashed it to the security guards, and then you got a 3-hour break in the middle of the school day. So my friend Natasha and I, still giddy from getting out of such an arduous task, were about a block away from school when we noticed Mr. Axt's trademark shuffle about a half a block in front of us. Now, in the cinematic classic Mean Girls, Janice Ian says, "Seeing a teacher out of class is like watching a dog walk on his hind legs." And this was the dog of all dogs walking on his hind legs a half a block in front of us. So we followed his blue tracksuit very slowly, he's a very slow walker, for a couple blocks before he stops and pauses. And so we, of course, stop and pause. We hide behind some cars, all detective-like, with our heads poking out one on top of each other, like how they did it in the Disney Channel shows. And we watch him walk across the street towards an unmarked, white, windowless van. It's parked in front of a nondescript house, and we think, okay, this is where it gets good. Mr. Axt is in the mob, he's involved in some sort of contraband situation. He's been playing us, he's just been a smart dude involved in some shady shit this whole time, and we're gonna bust this case wide open. So we see him talking to the driver, they exchange pleasantries, they get out and walk towards the back of the van and open it up. The driver goes inside, and Mr. Axe seemingly stands guard. We cannot wait to see what he brings out. It's gotta be some just really juicy shit. So he comes out with several bundles of things. Maybe it's something wrapped in cloth, and we're just not sure what it is until Mr. Axe holds up one of them to inspect it. And it's a navy blue tracksuit. He's got about 4 brand new navy blue tracksuits in his hands, and he carefully inspects each one, but none of them are satisfactory. So he sends the guy back into the van, comes out with tracksuit after tracksuit after tracksuit, until Mr. Axe finds one that's different and better than all the rest. Pays for it in cash, because this deal is clearly off the books. Goes on his way, and the van drives away. We immediately stop cutting Jim. We know we need to find out more about this odd specimen of a man. So my 2 main accomplices in our rapid descent into a maddening obsession were Aiden and Natasha. And the way that Natasha's obsession with Mr. Axe manifested itself was she began to develop an actual personal relationship with him. She would go eat lunch with him. He liked cream cheese and jelly sandwiches, not peanut butter and jelly. She would chill with him after class. She would figure out more things about his personal life. They developed a real, like, grandfather, granddaughter, but in the creepiest way, relationship. He even bought her a matching bucket hat to wear on sunny days. Now, Natasha at the time was the editor-in-chief of our school newspaper, so she could pretty much publish whatever she wanted. And she published a page-long op-ed about herself and her relationship with Mr. Axe entitled, "Teen Finds Role Model in the Elderly." About how our generation just did not care about old people and how much they had to offer. She learned everything there was to know about the NFL in the 1950s. She just was there for him in a way that I don't think anyone else was. The way that Aiden and my obsession manifested itself was in a much more observe and report anthropological way. So we would take detailed notes as he was talking in class. We would collect tidbits of information and try to piece them together. By the end of a week and a half, we had a full, comprehensive schedule of his whereabouts almost 24 hours a day. Soon enough, though, just knowing what he was up to at school and being able to track his whereabouts on campus, you know, where he went to lunch, what he liked to eat, that became banal, that became boring. We needed to know what he was up to outside of school. That's where the real money was. That's where we were going to get the good dirt. So to give him some credit, he was a lot more lucid than we expected, and so it took a little while, but we eventually tracked him back to his apartment building where he lived alone, figured out his apartment number, and rifled through his mail several this week. We didn't dig up a lot of good stuff. He was mostly into golf and aviation, super normal old person stuff. But we did learn about his senior citizens only basketball league, and we called the commissioner weekly to figure out how his team had done. I think they got 3rd, so congrats on their league. But it had gotten to the point where I could not go a single conversation without bringing up Mr. Axe and all the weird shit that I knew about him. I thought that we were like pioneers of anthropology and we were studying this unique human case, that he was just an odd, off-human species and we were learning everything about him. My friends hated it. They just could not handle how much I loved Mr. Axt, how much I loved knowing what he was up to at all times of the day. Yeah, my mom thought it was really creepy, but I just thought she didn't know any better. She was jealous of how excited I had been about Mr. Axt. So all this happened in about a month-long period of time. It was a rapid descent into just this weird subhuman existence. And I was brought out of it in a similarly abrupt way as I descended into the pit. I was on the way to soccer practice with my friend Jenna Waldman and her dad Peter, who had gone to Lowell High School. And it didn't really matter what the conversation was because obviously I brought it back to Mr. Axt. And I was just talking about something that I thought was hilarious that he had done that day or that he had done earlier that week, something that I should have not known about in any way. And Peter turned back at me in the car and his face was just like so sad, so deeply disappointed and so truly sad. I just will not forget that. And he said that when he was at Lowell and when Mr. Axt had been his assistant football coach, he was on the football team, that he had lost his wife and young daughter in a horrific plane crash, and that it had really just rocked the entire school community. And I had known that Mr. Axt had had a family before and that they weren't around anymore. But I think that I was just unwilling to acknowledge anything about him that might humanize him, that might just turn him from this unique anthropological case into just a human old man that had lost everything. And that would turn me from a pioneering scientific explorer into the great unknown of human behavior into just a massive asshole, which was really what I had been the entire time. It was awful learning that and just having known that you were the bad guy the entire time. But after that, Aiden and I, we couldn't go back to PE class, we couldn't look at him or just acknowledge how ashamed and how embarrassed we were at what we had done and how we had spent 80% of our time for the past 5 weeks. I think we both got B's in PE that semester, which was probably the lowest grade that Mr. Axt has ever given, or will ever give. And we couldn't hang out with Natasha anymore after that either. She was still tight with Mr. Axt, and she was a constant reminder of how we had just ruthlessly dehumanized a poor old guy who was just doing his best to try to get by without the people that he loved. But Mr. Axt still teaches at Lowell, and he has been my little brother's PE teacher several times. Thank you.